Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Our top story, an urgent alert. A top U.S. agency warning all water facilities to immediately bolster their cybersecurity. More on how recent moves from China, Russia, and Iran are involved. U.S. Secretary Yellen asks Europe to help the U.S. deal with an oversupply of Chinese goods. She spoke in Germany, calling it a global issue.
China's industrial policy may seem remote as we sit here in this room, but if we do not respond strategically and in a united way, the viability of businesses in both our countries and around the world could be at risk.
Retaliation from Beijing. The Chinese Communist regime has imposed sanctions against former U.S. lawmaker and top China hawk Mike Gallagher. Details on the new measures. And reactions are pouring in after the International Criminal Court sanctioned Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Critics say the tribunal is targeting democracies and skipping authoritarian regimes like China. An urgent call to protect America's drinking water. The Environmental Protection Agency sent out an alert to water facilities across the U.S. Monday, asking them to immediately beef up security against cyber attacks from China, Iran, and Russia. U.S. officials say hackers linked to 3 countries are taking aim at water systems across the U.S., and the frequency and severity of their attacks have reached a point where the EPA said more action is critical. At risk is the clean and safe drinking water in the U.S., a critical lifeline that remains vulnerable. Over 70% of the water utilities inspected last year did not meet safety standards to prevent breaches. Some of them are still using default passwords and fail to cut off former employees' access to the systems. According to U.S. officials, a Chinese state-backed hacking group has already compromised some drinking water systems in the U.S. It's unclear if its operation has been busted. NTD reached out to the FBI for comment. The agency responded, but did not give specifics. The FBI also previously cut off Chinese hackers' access to some major U.S. water and energy systems after they lurked there and maintained backdoor access for at least 5 years. Earlier this year, a Russian hacking group tried to disrupt several water utilities in Texas. Last year, an Iran hacking group targeted a water provider in a small town in Pennsylvania. The cyber attack forced the company to switch from a remote pump to manual operations. This March, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan wrote to all 50 states, asking them to come up with plans to fend off cyber attacks against water systems. The U.S. has over 50,000 water providers. Many of them serve small towns and are already struggling to maintain their operations. The EPA said it would train water utilities that are in need for free. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen says the United States and Europe need to respond to China's industrial policies in a strategic and united way. She says the aim is to keep manufacturers and business on both sides of the Atlantic.
China's industrial policy may seem remote as we sit here in this room, but if we do not respond strategically and in a united way, the viability of businesses in both our countries and around the world could be at risk. The U.S. and Europe, along with many others, are concerned by China's actions, from its pursuit of economic coercion to macroeconomic imbalances that are leading to industrial overcapacity.
Speaking in Germany, Yellen said China's excess industrial capacity threatened both American and European firms, as well as the industrial development of emerging market countries. She said the viability of businesses in Germany, the U.S., and around the world could be at risk. Her comments come a week after the Biden administration announced steep new tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles, semiconductors, steel, and other strategic industries. She warned Chinese officials in April that the U.S. would not accept the excess production of these goods in order not to flood global markets with cheap exports. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen also has a message for German bank executives, urging them to comply with U.S. sanctions against Russia. She warned that penalties could be on the table if those companies help Moscow procure critical goods for its war in Ukraine. Worth noting, Russia has been one of China's largest allies. Relations between the two countries have only grown stronger since Moscow launched its invasion of Ukraine. A small town in Michigan losing its battle with a Chinese battery maker tied to the Communist Party. A judge gave battery maker Gotion the go-ahead to build a plant in Michigan. NTD's Juliet Song has more.
Chinese battery maker Gotion scored a win. A U.S. district judge ruled it can go ahead and build a battery plant in Green Charter Township, a small town in Michigan. Local residents have staged protests against Gotion's plant. It's a $2 billion investment and set to create over 2,000 jobs. Still, locals are worried about its communist ties.
What are they doing with the profits that come out of this? Are they putting it back into the community, or is it going over to China? What about the opportunities for using these locations for spying headquarters, which is often what the Chinese Communist Party does? And then are the jobs actually going to be Americans, or are they going to bring in Chinese, which they often do with the Belt and Road Initiative? So in no instance have I seen where the Chinese bringing in manufacturing has actually benefited the community.
Gotion's Chinese parent company has a Communist Party cell operating inside it. The parent company also hired over 900 Communist Party members, including its CEO. The Chinese parent company has full control over Gotion. The information was first uncovered by news outlet The Daily Caller. A Michigan resident voiced her concerns with NTD last year.
I don't think that we need to bring that in, invite that in, give them tax incentives to come over here when we're essentially fighting a battle with China on many different levels. So I don't understand why we are bolstering up our enemies, so to speak, instead of choosing a company that would better America, that would help our citizens and hold true to our values.
Then there's the location. The plant site of Gotion's factory sits just 100 miles from Camp Grilling, the largest U.S. National Guard training facility. Here's what led to Gotion's lawsuit. Last August, the township gave Gotion the green light to set up a plant, but those board members have been voted out of office. The new board is anti-Gotion and dropped the deal that would send water to Gotion's plant site. The Chinese company then filed a lawsuit. The judge ordered the township to follow through with the previous agreement while the case is in court. Board members say they're disappointed. Gotion said it's ready to move forward with the project. Juliet Song, NTD News.
A China hawk is facing retaliation from Beijing. China announced sanctions Tuesday on former U.S. lawmaker Mike Gallagher, who often promoted tough on China legislation in the House. Gallagher served as the chairman of the House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party. Just 5 weeks ago, he stepped down and left the House. Now, Beijing has banned Gallagher from entering China or from trading with Chinese organizations and individuals. Any assets he holds in the country will also be frozen. Gallagher spoke up numerous times against China and backed investigations into China's forced labor accusations and the TikTok bill. He also led a congressional delegation to Taiwan this February, angering Beijing. Reactions are pouring in after the International Criminal Court sanctioned Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu over the Israel-Hamas war. But critics point to leaders who haven't been indicted by the tribunal. In a post on X, former State Department spokeswoman Morgan Ortega said the ICC has been targeting democratic nations instead of authoritarian leaders, namely Chinese leader Xi Jinping, Iran's Grand Ayatollah, North Korea's Kim Jong-un, and many more. When it comes to China's human rights violations, the ICC has been notably silent over the years. The tribunal said it wasn't able to probe Beijing's suppression against the Uyghur minority group. That's because the regime isn't a signatory to the Rome Statute, a treaty that establishes the ICC. Several U.S. lawmakers said they are planning to vote on sanctions against the ICC for its arrest warrant against Netanyahu. Thousands of Taiwanese protesters took to the streets near Taiwan's parliament on Tuesday, protesting against the lawmaking body seeking more oversight on the new administration. The debate happening between supporters of Taiwan's opposition party and the ruling Democratic Progressive Party. Outside of Taiwan's parliament building, some protesters were heard chanting, "If there are no discussions, there's no democracy." Some protesters told NTD that they were concerned the new measures could hurt the island's democracy. Watch.
Could it be that the legislative power surpasses the executive power, leading to unlimited expansion of authority, allowing arbitrary arrests and detentions of people? Or if the parliament simply being displeased could lead to perusing through documents? This is one of the reasons we're protesting.
The opposition party, the Kuomintang, is pushing for increased oversight. It wants more power to scrutinize the government, but the ruling party accused them of forcing through proposals without consultation. The Chinese Communist Party prefers to negotiate with Taiwan's opposition party due to it traditionally favoring Beijing's policies. Beijing has attempted to increase its influence on the island by winning over key figures in the party. Former Taiwan President Ma Ying-jeou and other current lawmakers from the party were also recently invited to China. The controversy has added to the difficult situation Taiwan's new president, William Lai, is facing. Lai was just sworn into office Monday, and besides threats from an angry China, he must also contend with a divided parliament. His own party, the Democratic Progressive Party, does not have a majority. A revolutionary electric car battery developed in China charges in 10 minutes, but runs for hundreds of miles. The International Energy Agency calls it a game changer, but warns of China's tightening grip on critical battery materials. Could this dominance derail global net zero ambitions? We spoke with retired Air Force Brigadier General Robert Spalding about the new development. He's the former Senior Director for Strategic Planning at the White House National Security Council. President Biden made headlines for increasing the tariffs on Chinese EVs to 100%. Now, when it comes to EVs, there's a new report out by the International Energy Agency, or IEA, which says that China has developed a revolutionary electric car battery that can charge in 10 minutes and that it can travel 250 miles per charge. But the agency is raising concerns over China's dominance in the supply chain, especially in terms of the minerals and materials needed to make these batteries. Now, what is your reaction to this new report?
Well, I think even with the increase in EVs, it's not going to make much of a dent in the increase in global carbon emissions. A lot of that is coming from China's use of coal-fired energy. And that doesn't show any time slowing anytime soon. And so, honestly, I think we have to take a step back and see what are we trying to achieve here. If the answer is that we're trying to make the environment, make the global environment safe, then just cutting off and tariffing EVs is not sufficient. I think cutting off consumption of exports from China should be our goal, because if you cut off consumption of those exports, then that coal-fired energy plants that the Chinese Communist Party are running in order to run the factories that produce those goods, they're going to have to shut down because they're going to have nowhere for the goods to go. So to me, if we were focusing on cutting off China's productive capacity, we'd be much more effective by cutting off consumption. We'd be much more effective at protecting the environment. I think EVs just really don't make a dent.
General Spalding, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
That's all for today's China in Focus on YouTube. We're now sharing a shortened version of our program here after being demonetized for 3 years. If you'd like to support us, consider donating. Find us at donorbox.org/China-in-focus or subscribe to our partner platform Epic TV, where you can watch our full episodes. Just click the link down below. Here's what to look out for in our second half. An out-of-character move from Apple. The tech giant is slashing iPhone prices in China for the second time this year. A look at local competition upping the pressure on its sales. The Chinese regime's satellite fleet would pose a threat to U.S. troops in the Pacific if a conflict were to break out. An analyst talks China's breathtaking capabilities for precision targeting and how the U.S. can counter them.
Very simply put, this is what they will use for decisive oversight for targeting of bases, ships, even aircraft by long-range missiles.
CDC warns that a new COVID-19 variant called KP.2 has become a dominant strain. Plus, China CDC admits the virus is appearing inside China. At the same time, eyewitness reports from China suggest rising death tolls. More on that after the break here on China in Focus. Thanks for watching China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. See you tomorrow.